We are now recording.
Okay, great. My coffee.
All right, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first cultural competency training. Again, this is a voluntary training today, and the title is going to be Latinx Spirituality and Wellness, Current Relevance, and Ancestral Roots. And we have our presenters today, Dr. Manuel, and I'm sorry, but I'm still having trouble pronouncing your name.
Zamarripa. Zamarripa.
Zamarripa.
Yeah.
And it's
Tlazoltiani is going to be hard because that's a Nahuatl name. So that was the name given to me by my elders of my siembra de nombre. So Tlazoltiani or Jessica, whatever everybody's comfortable with. Zamarripa.
Excellent. And they are here visiting today from the Institute of Chicana, Chicano Psychology. So we are very, very pleased to have them here today to present this training for all of us. And just so everybody knows, the training is being recorded. And I'd like to encourage everybody, the same as we do with all trainings, please during the training keep yourselves muted because we don't want to have any background noise and then risk missing any part of the training. You can also shut down your emails too, as mine just did, so that way you don't get notifications of your email. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Manuel and to Jessica.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. We're excited to share this time and this space with you today for the next few hours. And as I think you may know, we're going to spend time with you again in February, kind of in a second part to this training. But we also wanted to say really quickly, of course, that it's geared to also be two standalones, this one and in February. And if you're here for this one, we're also gonna get a benefit of the one in February, so they're going to be distinct presentations. So yeah, I'm Manuel Zamarripa.
Hi, with permission of the Four Directions, with permission of all my ancestors, with permission of the guardians of this sacred place where I am and where you all are, with permission of all of your hearts, I'd like to present myself as Jessica Tlazoltiani Zamarripa. And I am a moon dancer, danzante de la luna, and our big 5-day ceremony is coming up in November. I'm also a danzante, Mexica Xochipilli, so what you might have seen as like Aztec dance. And so also co-founder of the Institute of Chicanx Psychology. So we're happy to be with you today so we can share all the beautiful things about Latinx spirituality, wellness, and then we get to look into the current relevance and the ancestral roots. So that is a really, I'm glad we have 3 hours so we can go a little bit in depth.
Yeah, sure.
Can you do the slide so I can do the land acknowledgement? Well, opening. So we're already in a way modeling, right, the spirituality that we're going to be talking about, because it is ancestral to open and close in a good way, to have an energy exchange in everything you do. So this is how when we get to be in person, maybe sometime we can come and be in person with you all, and we would open in círculo, in a circle, which is a concept, an ancestral concept. It's a sacred concept of the circle. So we open in circle where energy flows in a particular way, and we want to try and position ourselves. Okay, right now we're going to try and take off our Western lenses, put on our decolonizing lenses, and notice that in a typical Western meeting, there's presenters up front, there's people, viewing, and it's all organized in a particular way. Well, let's try and virtually organize ourselves in a circle. If you'll notice in the círculo, when we open, here we're opening all the directions, right, to honor us with their energies. We'll get into that later, but that's what you're seeing in the picture. But organize yourself into a circle with everybody. And in that way, you'll notice there's no one up front and there's no one behind. From any vantage point you look in the circle, you are all, and we are all, of an equal position. And so that is true too in speaking and in every way, right? So if we say something and you feel really moved to ask a question or to add something to it, speak from your heart, feel free to do that. So if you'll notice too in the circle, energy can move. Well, the elders tell us, because we can't see it, right? Energy moves like laces through the people in a particular way. And so it is a way to harmonize all of our hearts, all of our beings, all of who we are. So we can, since it's virtual right now, we can try and do that, you know, shift our minds to be harmonized, in harmony with the people that are here, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So in beginning in a good way, we want to acknowledge the land of where we are currently, reside and work. So when we talk about land, land is a part of who we are as Native people, right? I invite you to explore the fact that if you are Latino, you most likely have ancestors on this continent. You most likely are from this land. So this land is a part of who we are. And then whatever land you come from is a part of who you are. It's a mixture of our blood, our past, our current, and our future. We carry our ancestors in us and they're around us, as you all do. And this was something said by Mary Lyons. She's the Leech Lake Band of the Ojibwe people. So it's important to understand the long-standing history that has brought all of us to reside on the land and to seek to understand our places within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in past tense or in historical context. Colonialism and coloniality is a current, ongoing process. And so we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. So acknowledging the lands that we are on of the Tonkawa in Central Texas and the Comanche and the Apache move through this area, and the Clahuitecan. So today, various indigenous people from all over the globe visit Austin and call it home. So we want to acknowledge the lands of these people. So before we still beginning is can be a long process. You should imagine in ceremony how long the beginning is and the closing. So before we begin anything, we honor our ancestors and our teachers. So the sacred abuelas, abuelos, abuelas, especially my madrina, Rosa Tupina Yautonauquatli, Maria Elena Martinez, Jerry Teo, Rita Navarrete, Gary Perez, abuela and bisabuelas, and my ancestors, our ancestors. We acknowledge the sacred directions, the elements, the energies who guide our hearts and our words. And we offer gratitude and ask permission to speak with the family of people that are here with us today. Om Meteo. And now we begin. So we're going to spend time orienting where we are in position to our human and our non-human relatives, our ancestors, the cosmos, sacred energies, directions, elements, especially our Mother Earth, Tonantzin-Tlali-Coatlicue, which is what we call our Mother Earth. So we're going to spend time in relation to all these things, in relation to all that is, everything that exists.
Just a little bit about our community, the Institute. We are a community-focused, community-building collection of people, a circle. And what we try to offer, like this training today, is we try to offer some workshops, some pláticas, some trainings within what we call the Chicanx psychology, Chicanx affirmative perspective. And we always want to acknowledge and start with all the wisdom and the strengths in our community while we attend to the healing that we need and the wounds and the difficulties and the struggles. And so that's just just a brief overview of what we do. And if you want to look a little more, you can go to our website. I didn't put it on here, but we can get it to you. It's rasapsychology.org. So just a little bit about us. I think many people know this already, but just as a quick reminder, one of the reasons why we are an institute of Chicano psychology, but not psychology and mental health in the traditional way. It's kind of beyond. It's expanded, and in some ways it's a circle also, as we were talking about, because the origin of the word psychology really started out as the study of the soul. So I think sometimes when people are like, well, is that really psychology? Sometimes, and it's like, yes, for us, it's all psychology. It's a reclaiming of psychology and mental health. And so in that space and that idea, and many of you probably have experienced this in one way or another, is that, there's not always this clear line between what constitutes spirituality and mental health within the Latinx populations. For a lot of us, even though some of our community may not have the words, but when we, some of them do, but when we listen to their experiences, talking about mental health sometimes could be a spiritual experience, and sometimes the spiritual experience can also be inclusive of what we would consider mental health. And so a lot of the times those have been kept separate. And so what we try to do is see the connection between the two. And today we're going to talk, about how the spirituality in the lives of our community comes up and how it's connected to their wellness in general. And ask, again, we'll be asking you for your own experiences, where you see this showing up. And hopefully we can engage a little bit in some discussion and some back and forth. Okay, so that, I think, let me see. I just wanted to kind of put that there. So I sure most of you have talked about or seen this notion of la cultura cura, which means a lot of different things. And we have one example here from Jerry Theos, who some of you may know out there in California. But la cultura cura is the notion that what we have within our culture, our wisdom, our healing, that when we're having struggles and difficulties, that many times the answers lie within our own cultural background, right? So, so that's what we mean when we're talking about la cultura cura. And it's also kind of a guiding principle for a lot of what we do. And so one of the things that we wanted to also kind of lay as a foundation a little bit, and kind of have some of you maybe be thinking about this, reflecting on this, is that when we see spirituality show up in our interactions, and I know some of you are clinicians, I believe, and some of you are, caseworkers, and there's a variety of roles, but in the community that you work with, sometimes we'll see definitely people talking about their spirituality and their practices. And so I think we haven't had as much training and discussion as we need to on how to center that in a positive and a good way. For example, if we hear clients saying that they're going to a practitioner, curandero, sometimes there are judgments about, well, that's not really the appropriate care that they need, right? Or it might even be harmful. And so what we're saying is that we have to kind of take the whole situation in context. Because sometimes coming, to a mental health provider may not be the appropriate care, or may be harmful as well, right? So we have to look at what the context is for that person's life, or that family's life. Yeah, so I think I just wanted to check in on that. And if there are any questions or comments right now, I'm sure is there a chat feature? I forgot to ask about that part. I think there's a
Yeah,
chat
we have
feature.
never used Teams before. We're
So that's
long time Zoom. Let's see here. I don't see the chat.
Well, that's the PowerPoint stuff.
Oh, okay. It would be in there.
Yeah, let's see. Okay.
Maybe, Jonathan, if there is a question or a comment that comes up in chat, if you want to just read it, if you don't mind, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Or we can continue to look for that.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So something we always say, right? With all of there's so many, everything is interconnected, right? When you come from a colonized or a colonial history, a colonized history, is that there are a lot of invisible obstacles that we don't realize affect our lives daily. Racist systems, school to prison pipeline, maybe just even a negative perception of our kids of color that may be acting out, having some kind of anxiety or some kind of a mental health need, but it is treated in a way where it is punished, punitive, and then they're viewed in a certain way, right? And then we've probably all heard of the school to prison pipeline. So these things are invisible. It's not like you see an actual school to prison pipeline. What are we talking about, right? Or just the access to credit, access to home loans, access to healthy food, access to clean water, and all of these things. So these things that affect our lives are often invisible. So we just think we're not trying hard enough, we're not doing enough, we need to be more, do more, right? For our families to be well and all of those things. And we're not recognizing that there's many systems in place in our lives that affect us. If we don't have access to a vehicle and we have to ride the bus to several different places to do the laundry, all of these things, right? From when we shift that lens, right, to me, that is a strength. That is leadership. If you can take your kids and take your laundry and go to the laundromat and get all that done and still do all the things that need to be done, that is a leadership skill. That is a tremendous strength, right? But it's exhausting. We acknowledge again the strengths and the things that need to be healed and changed societally. So then we come to this saying, our wellness is a form of resistance. And that's why we have workshops like this or pláticas like this. That's why we do the work that we do in the community, because when we are well, it is a form of resistance, just the act of being well. Mm-hmm. So that's a really profound thing when you think about all the things in place. We also, along with, what is that amazing psychologist that I always talk about?
Lillian Gomez Diaz.
Lillian Gomez Diaz. She created something called a post-traumatic colonization disorder. So it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, it's post-traumatic colonization disorder. And I say that because it's an intergenerational trauma that we argue stems back from around 500 years ago. So passed down trauma in that way, and then also our own traumas. So all of that together, we can start to see a picture of how, our wellness truly, to be well as a BIPOC person, as a Latinx person, is a form of resistance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
So we may not be ready for this discussion yet. Should we go through a little bit more about spirituality and then come back to the questions, the discussion questions?
Sure. So there have been others. Cervantes is one. I think he's out in California as well.
Jose Cervantes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great
psychologist.
And he writes a lot about Latinx spiritual practices. And so this was this was in about 2010. And so he talks about, some of the Latinx spiritual principles that are kind of they are mixed with some of our indigenous um, history, right? Legacy that filters through. And so if you look, you can see some of these principles, even, if you see people practicing through kind of the lens of Catholicism or other Christianity, within a Latinx, family or community or interaction, you can see some of these principles.
Are these psychological principles or?
They're indigenous Latino spiritual principles,
Mm.
and so they are those that we see that Tlazoltiani has been talking about. The earth is a living system, like connection to everything around us.
Mm.
And so we see that with respect for all the life around us. We see that in the respect that a lot of our people have for the land. And so we're not going to, you have it there so you can kind of look at it. So, I'm not going to read through all of it, but just like number 6, songs, prayer, meditation, dance, ceremony. Those are all ways to connect to wisdom. Those are all ways to show respect and reverence for the sacredness of everything that we have around us, right? And so that's the key thing that we see. Of course, number 8, the creative life force. Some of us call that creator, God, and all the spirits connected with it and energies. And some of those energies are spirits. Some people will call angels, saints, or other energies or spirits that we're going to talk about. But the point is that it's all interconnected, and it impacts our life development, or as it says, our lifespan development. It impacts how we view the world as a good place, a difficult place. It impacts what we see as goals for ourselves about living a good life. What is healthiness? What's happiness in life? What do I sacrifice? What do I not sacrifice to stay connected in this balance, right? Go back up to just number 5, for example. Again, everything's holistic. Not everything is linear.
Probably circular, like we were talking
Everything's
about.
circular, and knowledge is revealed sometimes in those interactions we have with each other, with nature, and when we're in that space, that's when we can speak our truth, right? So you can see the sacredness of that, as people would find that very important. And so that's why some people say, like in a mental health space, that safe space that's created, some people would argue too that it overlaps with creating a sacred space for those that are coming for that healing, right? Because for them, they're able to hopefully speak their truth, or hopefully able to feel understood and at least acknowledged and respected.
I honor these psychologists that have done all this research because it centers our ways of being, right? It doesn't make it an other. It doesn't make it a folk knowledge. It doesn't make it an aside or an alternative. Again, right? Well, we I was going to say, does that really make it more valuable? No. I mean, for thousands of years, we've known these ways, we've lived these ways. But it also brings it into academia, gives us a place at the table, a part of the discussion of wellness, mental health, well-being, from our own perspectives, from our own lenses, and and that is invaluable to be able to look at this research, right, and see it as it is, like it relates to our lives. 2, we're going to talk about this a lot. I looked at number 2. There is a shift from a disassociated self to a unifying relational self, where life is viewed more holistically. That is one of the underlying concepts that would be great for you to just keep in mind as we go through and talk about spirituality in this way. Go ahead and go on to the next slide. And here we go. I left the word folk on here on purpose because I want to point out how it's always anything other than Western medicine, right?
Mhm.
Western psychology, Western mental health concepts, paradigms, praxis, all of those things, right? Is considered folk or other or alternative, and so we need to really shift that perspective. That is another main understanding. Make these shifts of not devaluing in a way, and even in the words that we use, right?
Mhm.
A UT where I went to college, they had folk. They called the Mexican American Studies before that. They called it something about folk institute or something like that for ethnic studies, but then they shifted that, right, to again center all ways of healing, all ways of viewing mental health, all ways of connecting, like we're doing spirituality with wellness.
Mhm.
So so folk healing and curanderismo. So a set of folk medical beliefs, rituals, and practices that address the psychological, social, and spiritual needs of Mexican and Latinx populations through a system of medicine with its own theoretical, diagnostic, and therapeutic roots.
Yeah, so I think we've all at least heard of Gutenberismo in some way or known a little bit about it, or some of us know a lot about it. Um, and this is one of the examples that we see in terms of current beliefs and practices. There was talk, I think, about 20 years ago about curanderismo dying out, which we know, of course, is not true at all. It was always, only portrayed as something that was practiced in a rural area, a small town. That's still true. But as you may know, even in big metropolitan areas, cities, urban areas, you have somewhere in some of the neighborhoods a curandera, curandero, some type of healer. Um, so it's now, it's contemporary,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of the ways that is a source of strength and a source, as you know, of healing for a lot in the Mexican American or Latinx communities. It's something that's been carried on and practiced. And the whole thing about, I think one of the reasons, as Tlazoltiani was saying, why, when we're talking about folk healing, why it's kind of in the periphery, right? Is because, folk means of the people, which means it hasn't been canonized, it hasn't been officially um, given the go ahead by the institutions or the medical community in such a way. It comes from the community. And so the thing about, as you know about curanderismo probably is that that's also been a way for our people to heal, to resist, to be resilient, even without the blessing of institutions like the Catholic Church or other Christianity institutions where you have to go through, through a hierarchy. There's the priest or the pastor, whoever, and and so there's we could talk about just that,
Right.
that whole process, and but my point is that curanderismo bypasses all of that need for approval from a larger system. It's carried within the community, it's carried within the home, and so it holds a very special place in the development of Latinx communities. Um,
And it provides access to that well-being where otherwise there wouldn't be, right?
yeah, Yeah, and so this pretty much says what we were saying right now. It offers also that sense of stability. That was the part we
Mm-hmm.
you know, and even though things shift and change, there's always a curandero somewhere, right? A curandera somewhere that's carrying on some of that legacy.
Yeah, it says here throughout the generations in light of acculturation, globalization, and urbanization. And now I love that we're starting to see a lot more of our communities decolonizing and realizing that that we have these, that we walk with our ancestors, that we have these ways, right? These ancestral gifts that have been left for us through great, great tragedy, genocide, many things. And these things survived and continue to survive. San Antonio, Texas just did a, where we're from, San Anto. They just did a community healing, Curanderismo fair, where the community could come out and some of our community members who work with the medicine, who have been taught, right? We are going to touch on that later. We don't want to just start doing medicine because, curanderismo, because we like it and we learn a little bit about it. No, we have to learn from our teachers. We have to learn from our elders. We have to learn the right way. We have to have that blessing. We have to, I'm a moon dancer, and in 2 more years, I'm going to be an abuela of moon dance. I'm going to be a carrier of those ways, which I already am in some ways, but I will have the blessing to do the ceremonies and the rituals by myself, right? To lead them, to do the weddings, Amara de Tilmas and all of that. So you can't just go and start, right? You have to be respectful and learn, right? But we are starting to see that, and I think Dell Center here too is starting to make room for traditional native medicine, curanderismo, to have a space too in the Dell Medical Center. So things are coming together. We still have to be careful, right? Not to need permission to have access to these ways. We have to be careful with the way we move forward. But it's nice because, as we always say with the Institute, it's a both and, not an either or, right? So both, there is also something, really necessary about Western medicine, about Western, concepts and things that we use, both and. When one of our youth needed psychiatric medication, the elders were saying, you know what, if that's going to help them, put it in the altar. Treat it like any one of the medicines. Treat it like with the yerbas, the herbs. Treat it like you do with the fire that you keep there, with all of the elements. Keep it in the altar. It could be because it's going to serve your family. It's going to serve your child in that way. So again, a both and.
So yeah, and I think this just speaks to what we were saying before, which is that this is current. This is still something that our community still tends to connect with and rely on, and so I'm sure that this comes up, and you've seen this in some ways, maybe some of you more than others. And so I think this would be a good time to go back to the questions that we had.
We could do that.
We can go back up.
So, yeah, because then we start. Yeah, we could do that.
Okay. Are you going down?
No, I'm not the best with technology.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think we have breakout rooms
I didn't
with
see
teams.
anything. You know what? Everyone give us
Jonathan, are there breakout rooms with teams?
Yes, there is the ability to do it.
I think we could just discuss together, though. We'll probably just do that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think just you all just give us 1 second to just poke around for 10 seconds
Stretch,
here.
get some more tacos, some more coffee, tamales. Get your plate.
Okay. I think, let's see, also, see all the participants here. Okay, good. We got about 65 people.
65? Nice. Yeah.
Okay. So, and there's some chat stuff. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna ask you. We're not seeing this. How would you describe the role of spirituality growing up for you? And or how would you describe the role spirituality has for you in your life now? So the way you saw it growing up and the way it feels for you now in your life. So I'll just open it up, and you can put it in the chat. We'll spend a few minutes just kind of trying to gather together virtually, or as we like to say, it's always a little risk, a little tech risk, but I think it's fine, is that if you feel comfortable unmuting, just go ahead and unmute. And if several people unmute, it's not the end of the world. We're all intelligent. We can figure it out.
We'll be okay.
Yeah, it's not that big of a faux pas for us. We'll figure it out. So just interested, the role of spirituality in your life growing up, what role did it have? And what role does it have now? Or doesn't have? I mean, however you want to describe that.
That's true. Does or doesn't have. And also, we'll get into the elements later, but I like to remind in these times where people can unmute and speak or put their cameras on and share our rostros, our faces, is that to speak, right? That's the medicine of the wind, right? This is our breath. This is the wind within our body. And so that power of that medicine, of that direction of the north, that wind. So if you feel moved to say something, remember, it doesn't have to sound amazing or perfect. It doesn't have to be these incredible words. Just whatever you're moved to say or to share, we invite you to do that.
Yeah.
So repeat the questions again.
The role of spirituality had in your life growing up, and how the role it has in your life now.
Okay.
However that.
Hi. Thank you so much for sharing with our agency. My name is Beverly, and I think that I would just say that I think growing up, spirituality had a sense of like rigidity and like practice almost, like just kind of going through the motions. And I think now for me in my life, spirituality looks like what I make it. And so just very individualized and very flexible and very adaptable to my lifestyle. So that's it.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yes, hi, good morning. Kind of like Beverly, growing up, growing up Roman Catholic, my faith and my spirituality was, also very rigid and also very traditional in that aspect, going to Catholic school, elementary school and high school, even serving in the church in various roles throughout my life. And then now as an adult, I still I still have faith and I still believe in God and in Jesus and all of that. I know I don't practice it the same way that my parents did, or that they hope that I would continue to practice it now. I mean, I feel like I still have a relationship between myself and God, but at the same time, I'm also fully aware that I don't have to, that I can have the conversation anywhere, and as long as I feel like as long as I'm being a good person and providing for others and providing or giving back to my community, I'm still being a good person. And I've learned that that's ultimately, like, regardless of what faith or what you believe in, or what your spirituality is, like, I think that is the ultimate message, is that you try to be a good person, and that you try to be a good brother, a good neighbor, just a good human being.
Yes. No, thank you so much for sharing that. Keep putting that out there. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
Much along the same lines of what Emmanuel was saying, I grew up Lutheran, and my wife grew up Southern Baptist. And even though both of us, we grew up that way and we were really involved in church, and today we're not really so much as involved in church, but we are very much spiritual in our household. And how that affects us both today is a lot of the lessons that we learned when we were younger really do influence who we are today in terms of how we treat other people, other cultures, sensitivity to other people, to other people's needs, their culture, and so on and so forth. Much like Emmanuel was saying, treating people with love and respect, listening to other people, listening to their points of views, not judging other people, not doing anything to intentionally violate someone's rights, showing a sense of humility if you do make a mistake, that it's okay to make a mistake, and it's also possible to come back from it too if you do something like that. So we really both attribute our spirituality and our upbringing and our religious upbringing to how we implement those rules and those values today in our personal lives individually, but also our lives as a couple.
Thank you, Jonathan. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Y'all all bring up something really important, well, we grew up also Catholic. Actually, we went to the same Catholic middle school.
Yeah.
And elementary school. So it was very much a part of our lives. My father was a deacon. My mother almost became a nun before. So, but very rigid. Yes, that's true. Also, in fact, now that I have expanded my spirituality to include to pray through dance, through danza, and through sweat lodge and all these things, my mother would not consider me praying, even though I just prayed for 6 or 7 hours, moving my body, right, and with prayer. But she would not consider that because in Catholicism, that is not the way you pray. I think Emmanuel was saying, yeah, I pray wherever I am, and that is part of an ancestral knowing that we are related to everything that is, and that everything is alive, right? So wherever you are, it's true. If you're outside or in whatever way, yeah, you're praying there, and you are with God, with Creator. So I heard some ancestral things coming up as well.
Yeah. I try to paste on the chat some other questions, but didn't come out because I was pasting in a different font, but that's okay. So we're going to ask just a couple of more questions, and then we'll move on, and we'll just see if anyone wants to answer these, and maybe we can come back a little bit later. But so how would you describe the role of spirituality, your spirituality, on your well-being, right? And well-being is like your wellness, your health, your mental health, social, emotional health, your well-being. And does that seem to be the same or different for those around you? Your close inner circles. Do they seem to kind of be of the same kind of spiritual practices, if any, than you, or different? So, and you can answer either of these. One is, the role that you feel your spirituality has on your well-being, and then, or you want to just answer if your spirituality seems to be the same or different than those around you. And we'll just ask for a couple of responses, if that's okay, and then we'll keep going. It can be in chat, or you can unmute.
The role spirituality has in your well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I would like to share.
Hi, Gypsy.
Well, I want to say really quickly to everyone, I saw these two beautiful people in another training, and I was just so inspired by what they shared with us. I right away shared it with Jonathan, and then that's how we were able to collaborate and work together and bring these two beautiful people to our community to have this training today. So I'm so glad it worked out. But in regards to your question, well, spirituality is really important for me as an individual, but it's also part of who we are as a danzante family. I didn't grow up being a danzante, a traditional Aztec dancer, but I started really early in my early 20s, and I'm 55 now, so it's been a long time. But the three children that I have, they've been born into it, so it's something that's just very close to us. And the way we celebrate spirituality is for my children, it's very normal in what we do, in terms of burning copal, in terms of using sage, in terms of having an altar every day, year round, not just for Dia de los Muertos. But I have to say, I have incorporated other aspects of religion. Like my oldest daughter, her grandparents are Lutheran, so she went to a Lutheran school all her life. So you know, we did that, but also we still kept to who we are as Indigenous people. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can incorporate, you know, anything. I feel anything that makes you feel good, that inspires you, or that really helps your soul. I think you can, as long as you do it respectfully and you don't take from other cultures and kind of do things that are disrespectful. I think that it's okay. And you know, I had to do that for many years because her father expected her to continue to go to Lutheran school, but I also had her dancing, you know. So you just do it with respect, and believe it or not, at her little Lutheran school that she went to for many years, they learned a lot by our family being a part of that community, and they
Yeah.
learned to be really respectful of who we are as Chicano people, as Indigenous people, you know, and because she's half Caucasian and half Chicana. And you know, I used to always have them tell me, God, thank you for sharing with us, because I would do little things to share with their community. So if you have to be creative like that, so that you're, you know, the blended family that you may have with your children and their respective, you know, fathers or mothers, you can do that. But I think it's so important. And the last thing I'd like to say, it's so important to nourish the soul, whether it be with organized religion or without. Even just going out to a tree that you have in your backyard and going out and seeing the beauty of the tree, or whatever landscape you have of flowers, or if you don't, walk somewhere and just be in nature and have that nourish your soul and be thankful to the creator. And whoever the creator may be for you, that's what's really important, is really nourishing your soul.
Yes. Thank you, Gypsy.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Exactly. Being related to all that we are, to everything that is. Thank you for sharing that. And that again, that honors the both and, right? Instead of the either or. You can have this, you know, because I still honor my Catholic roots, right? They're long roots. But my native ancestral knowing and wisdom is longer, right? So it's a both and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is longer. Thank you, Gypsy. So let me see. We're gonna go ahead, I think, and
If
get
anyone
back to
else wants
sharing.
to share, you know, feel free. Even if we move forward, if
Yeah.
you feel moved to say something, just say, you know, just cut in. We're perfectly comfortable with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, just because we start sharing the screen again, please feel free to
Yeah.
continue.
And at any time, too, not only when we're discussing a particular group of questions to go deeper with each of our understanding about our own spirituality or whatever the topic may be, but at any time, if you feel like you want to add something, feel free.
Yes. So let's see here. Let me just get us back. Okay.
For my she was really involved in Wicca,
Uh-huh.
and part of the spirituality that she encompassed was, Gypsy, like you were saying, that everything that's living, everything around us is somehow linked back to one specific creator. Every form of life is also of value, and it's something that she really installed. I lead my spiritual life, that every form of life, I see a form of value in it.
Yes, you know, that's a good thing to say too. No matter what your ethnic background is, no matter what your race is, you are native to some land somewhere. So we always invite you to explore, you know.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do that Wicca or Celtic or whatever. They just go back and start exploring um, their own roots and then finding and honoring that medicine. When we do our ceremonies, you know, at times, you know, we're happy for people from, you know, all the different everywhere to come and share their own medicine, their own ways, and to participate in our ceremonies, of course, in a respectful way,
Mm-hmm.
non co-opting or anything like that. But But right, that connection is ancestral. A lot of our native medicine here, a lot of our Latinx indigenous knowledges here, of course, they're similar to what you will find in Eastern medicine or in around the globe ancestrally. So I'm glad you said that. Thank you for saying that.
So, some of the things that I think that we see come up from a kind of a more Latinx Christian Catholic spirituality, in terms of practicing of wellness and relevance in people's lives. We talked about, Curanderismo, the use of sometimes the saints, the santos, of course, the Virgen de Guadalupe, which we're going to talk about.
We'll talk about her a little bit more in depth a little bit later on.
And also rituals and ceremonies of
Curaciones.
curaciones.
That means like a curing.
Yeah, velaciones. All of
Ceremony.
these, all of these kind of practices are really kind of an integration with some indigenous roots, but more manifesting, through kind of a Christian or Catholic lens and practice. So we see this happen often, a lot, of course, in our community, and so I think that's important. And so sometimes we'll see how that may conflict with what we learn about mental health, and sometimes we may see how it fits right in line, right? And so I think that's always the role for us, on this end, whatever your role is, you're on, with the agency, is, if it feels like some of these practices or thoughts may conflict with what we learn, it's just an invitation to pause and see, why is it conflicting? Is it conflicting because there's actual unhealthiness happening, or does it conflict because, based on what we've learned, it's not what someone is supposed to do? Who decides what's supposed to, where that comes from. So it's an invitation to pause and think through a little bit more the root of our knowledge in mental health in general, broadly speaking, right, and wellness. And what we know is that root comes from an individualistic worldview. And much of what we talk about here, and much of Latino, Latina, Latinx culture, is a collectivistic worldview, where we see more the importance of relationships, interactions. We see more importance of the whole, and an individualistic view, which is more of a Western, definitely represented by the U.S., United States society, is where the individual is primary, right? And so you have all these, individual boundaries, and so the only thing that's lacking there is what we keep on talking about, which is that's not necessarily a both and. That's just the individualistic way of mental health gives primacy to the individual, and it doesn't always acknowledge the collective on an equal level, because we're all individualistic and we're all collectivistic. All societies have both values, right? There's a time and a place for individual boundaries.
Yes.
Right? But the thing with mental health is that it takes individual boundaries, as one example, as a taken for granted, good for everybody all the time, like the top of a pyramid, right?
That's true.
It doesn't say that's good from an individualistic way of looking at health. Have we considered collectivistic way of looking at health? There's no way anywhere where you think of the word dependency in a positive way in this society. And that tells you the dominance of individualism, because we know the importance in our culture of interdependence, or what people call pro-dependence, which is another way of saying that it's not always bad to be dependent on someone and to have someone depend on you if it's healthy. It's not always bad if someone got your back. I got your back, you got my back, right? In terms of your wellness in your life and in your health and in moving forward. There's unhealthy and healthy ways of doing that. And that's the difference between what we learn a lot of the times in the foundations of mental health and wellness is that individualism is always seen as healthy and collectivism is seen as unhealthy. And there's health and unhealth in both,
Yeah.
right? So we need to remember that piece. And we'll probably talk a lot more about that in February.
For the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that what Dr. Zamarripa, what Manuel just said, is so foundational. It's key to understand, again, as we talked about, bringing the invisible visible. It's just an assumed cultural dominant perspective, Eurocentric dominant perspective. We have to remember the roots of this field, right? Are white cis male perspectives. So when I said earlier, let's take off our Western lenses and put on our decolonizing, our native lenses, our of this land, indigenous lenses. Let's do that, and not in a co-opting way, but in a way of understanding and in a way of causing shifts in our lens, the way we view the world through our own lens, so that we can see, like you always say, it'll be pathologized if someone is codependent, right? But from our worldview, we move as an organism. We all move together, and it's true in all of the cycles and systems, right? For example, what happens on the other side of the world affects what happens here. Like those, I never know the name. Somebody's gonna have to look these up for me. These little organisms that create most of the oxygen, way more than trees, in the ocean, on the other side of the world. And if they are unwell, if their systems are out of balance, all of our systems, our oxygen it's going to suffer, right? So it's just a good reminder that as a people, and we talk about danza a lot, Gypsy was talking about it too, we all move together. If the person that is leading the danza in the center makes what some might say a mistake, but we wouldn't say that, just does a different step, we all do that different step, right? We don't go, no, I know the right way to do it, and we do our own step. No, we are putting that prayer in together, right? So that is an important shift in worldview from dominant individualism to valuing and centering collectivism. Again, not to say that there is no place. Of course, there's a place for boundaries. Are you kidding? For our to be able to say no, that's tremendous. That's so important. And both and, right? So we can honor that, and we can also learn to shift and center that collectivism. So that is for us to reflect, right? We're always self-reflecting on ways that we can serve our people, serve the people better, right? So that's why we have this slide up. So how ways that the role of spirituality supports mental health with or without collectivism, and ways that may be in conflict with current mental health practices, ways to improve that, to change that. How can we develop a better interaction and not cause harm? How can we integrate these beliefs and or practices into contemporary mental health? So as we take that, that'll be a seed that we're planting. Take that and reflect on that later. And continue to reflect on it. Ask yourself these questions as you serve the people. Next slide.
So, of course, we should have said, I think, earlier that, and I think we've been saying in different ways, that there are variations of adherence to spirituality at all, and to different types of spirituality in our community. And for some, as I say there, it's like part of their consciousness every day. It's who they are. For others, maybe it's some pieces of it are kind of part of how they grew up, but maybe not as much today. And of course, for others, that's just not a part of their life, right? It's just not, like some people may remember going to church as a kid a lot, and that was a big part of their life, and they don't do that anymore. And or they'll remember like, oh yeah, when someone would get sick, I had my abuela or somebody would come over and do the curación with the huevo, with the egg, and yeah, but that's not part of their life as much. So it's a continuum, and And it's interesting, however, though, as you probably know, that for a lot of our population, when they're in distress, a lot of the times, some aspects of spirituality creep up, become part of the conversation, even if it's that distant memory. All of a sudden, they hold on to something from their childhood, and they maybe try to make that a part of their healing now. Like they'll ask somebody, remember that thing with the egg? My son is really sick. Do you know anyone that can do the thing with the egg? Things come up in as one example. But there's this variety, where there are these variations in our spirituality.
And I like what people were saying earlier too about saying like, well, now I just make it, my own. I pray in my own way, and so culture and spirituality, and it's a living thing, right? So over time we can take what we need, again, at both end. We can honor what we want to honor. We can leave behind those things that became wounds to heal, right?
Mm-hmm. And of course we have Virgen Guadalupe or or Lady Guadalupe, that is a thread through all of Latinx spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not uncommon to see even Latinx communities that aren't necessarily Catholic at all, but still have some type of honoring of Our Lady of Guadalupe, because she crosses this boundary between spirituality, religion, and culture and history, and that itself is just powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're always seeing aspects of gender come up in a lot of the struggles in all communities, not just ours. That's one of the things, but through a Latinx lens, we see that gender can come up in struggles, familial struggles, relationship struggles, mental health struggles, access, and when spirituality is something that our community connects with, or the people that you're speaking with connect with, it's a foundation, it's a source of hope. Then it's important to know, and again, we'll leave this to you to think through, maybe, or you can always reach out to us afterwards with questions, or we'll connect with this more in February for those that are going to be there. But to think through this idea that this powerful symbol, this reality of Our Lady of Guadalupe, is a great symbol of gender equality and equity in the community, that we don't talk about as much, I guess. But her history, her rootedness is based on the foundation of justice. If y'all know the story of her appearance and all of that was to give an attempt to bring equality, equity, and justice and representation to a whole continent of people, right? And as some of you know, this symbol is a representation also of our Mexica, Aztec, says goddess, so that I think people can recognize that, but not really a goddess, more just an energy of Tonantzin, and Tonantzin is Mother Earth. Mother Earth. So the Virgen of Guadalupe is also Mother Earth.
Yeah. She made that transformation after the invasion, right? And in the early 1500s, and became Our Lady of Guadalupe, who has been the hope and the prayer for so many people for so long. So she, before she was Virgen de Guadalupe, was Tonantzin Lali Coatlicue is her full name. In Nahuatl, is snake. Lique is skirt. So Coatlicue, skirt of snakes, which are the waters, the rivers, the lakes, right? All of the waters. So she's wearing that skirt of snakes. So that's her blood. So her blood, the waters, Tonantzin, our Mother Earth. So again, she has a multiplicity of meanings, right? And she is also here, Lilian Gomez Diaz, in her research, she writes here, Latinx spirituality is pregnant with gender equality through Guadalupe. It is feminist and revolutionary. And she always has been that for throughout the years, right? A representation, and then we see here a representation of the Mexica, yeah, goddess, which would that we can go into later.
Okay.
That was a Catholic interpretation after the invasion, that they were gods and goddesses, but they're truly energies. So the energies, that is our Mother Earth. So she's a warrior, right? She's a guerrilla combatant. She's a freedom fighter. She's a guerrera, right? So in all of our social justice battles for wellness, for well-being, for our families, for ourselves, she has led the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she has been part of that rootedness to both faith and cultural identity. So, holding on to that connection with Our Lady of Guadalupe is also holding on to our sense of belonging, our sense that we belong here, and all the struggles that our community is facing, that you see, and that are also connected to, very real ways to their struggles of lack of equality, marginalization, discrimination, being pushed out, all the stressors that has on kids in school, people at work,
Erasure.
Holding on to Guadalupe is also holding on to that sense of cultural identity, and resistance. Right? And so, and this was also the thing about going to Curanderismo as well that I wanted to kind of loop back to, that connects with this, is that for our community, our spirituality a lot of times has been carried forth by the women in the family, by the mothers, the grandmothers. They impart the knowledge. They, want to kind of make that connection. They are most often the healers in a lot of ways. I know there's, men and women and all in between, but, historically and currently, it's important to say that, especially when we see a lot of the inequality in the roles of women, sometimes in our families, in the communities, in society in general, right? That they have been the passerons of that knowledge, and that's why in the last about 10 years or so, Dia de los Muertos comes up, and it's become it has become a good thing where you see all these altares now, all these altars to Dia de los Muertos. It's also become an artistic kind of offering, and so people know about it more. But we've always known that there were home altars, what were called home altars. Everyone has kind of their
It's like
altares.
Gypsy was saying, we have our altares all the time.
All the time, and so the reason why there were home altars was because that was the way that our community could pass on the knowledge and the faith the way that they wanted to, and didn't necessarily have to go to the altar at the church, right? And one of the reasons why that was important, I'll just say real quick, because then we'll take a break in a little while, like a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and then we'll hit some real, basic core concepts. But just say really quickly, one of the reasons why I say that and continue to say that is not necessarily Catholicism in general, but our history of the Catholic Church, particularly in the United States, was that even now, maybe not as much, but the priests that always came to the parishes were never of the community. They almost always were not even Latino. They were brought in from around the world, and so they also brought in their own prejudices, and this is documented. I did some research on this a long time ago about the history of that in the church. So again, here are a lot of times our communities would also face some of that discrimination, either racially or culturally, which is what is that indigenous thing that you're doing as you're coming to church on Sunday or what have you? And so because of that, we took our altars into the home, right? And the women, as was always our custom, continued to be the familial passer on of that wisdom and that healing and that knowledge. So we had this both and for those of us that were in Catholicism, we had both the connection with the Catholic Church and also we had our own home familial ways of connecting to our spirituality.
Which is, I think that's a very important thing to say as we decolonize, right? As we learn to take back and to reconnect. That's important to say. Of course, that spirituality is important to all the genders, right? The men and all of the genders, not just the women, but traditionally, the women have been the one to plant those seeds and keep those rituals and traditions going.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see.
It's 12:15. I'm trying to see when we're gonna stretch and take a break. Maybe in a little bit.
Maybe like in about 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
It's just a comment. Since you're using the word decolonize quite a bit, for a lot of us, we may not know what that meant. I didn't know what that meant until I went to junior college and took my first Chicano studies class. So can you just share a little bit about the word decolonize? Because when you bring up that word, you're really referencing something very important in terms of what we're doing in decolonizing. So can you share for our community, it's a long, I know it's a long talk, but a snippet of decolonization as you're using it in terms of what we're talking about?
Thank you for saying that. Yes. And that's why we always invite all voices in, right, to speak, because each of us is a universe. So as Gypsy had that understanding, it allowed us then to share more, right?
Yes, and I just want to say, I just now stopped sharing so I could see your hand raised. We had no idea. So anyone out there, if you have something to say, we're not ignoring you. We just can't see the hand raising. So you just
speak out.
Just please unmute or something. Sorry. So
yes,
decolonizing. There's also this criticism a little bit out there of people using that too often.
Right, or in the wrong way.
Or in the wrong way. So colonizing, we'll start with that, is an imposition of a certain ways of values, practices, beliefs that one group imposes on another group and does not allow that other group to utilize their own values of their own group's origins, right, and knowledge ways, and healing ways, and ways of speaking, and ways of learning, and ways of thinking, and ways of working, and all of those ways. And so that's why a colonizing practice a lot of the time was, for some of our indigenous communities, was not to use the drums, right? Because the drums was a connection of prayer, but it wasn't prayer in talking about spirituality and religion in a way that was sanctioned or wasn't done in a specific way.
Or not to pray with the sacred fire.
Or not to pray with the sacred fire. So colonizing ways are those impositions that are placed on people that replaces what they are normally doing and also declares what they were doing before as wrong or insignificant or not of value.
Or criminalizing.
So even sometimes criminalizing if it's seen as harmful to the structure.
So let me just add a little bit to that and then you can continue. But I think it needs to be stated at least once that when these things happen, they were done violently. It is a violent overtaking, a violent erasing of a people. Erasing of a people is violent. And then, of course, genocide and terrible, terrible things. So for a people to be able to believe their beliefs out loud, speaking the way they speak, thinking the way they think, praying the way they pray, all of these things is extremely important.
Did they freeze?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Give it a minute to come
Oh.
back in.
You know, that happened to me a little while ago, and I had to shut down everything and then come back in. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm glad it's not just me. Do you want to maybe text them, Jonathan, to see if they need to come back in again?
Yes, I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Oh, they left. I think they are going to come back in.
Yeah, it looks that way. It's happened slightly on my end too, where during the recording, the internet here at the office started cutting in and out, and
Yeah.
hopefully it's
Well,
behaving.
yeah, that happened to me a little while ago. Like my whole computer froze. I had to shut it down. Well, I hope everybody's enjoying this training so far.
It's been very
It's
informative.
beautiful outside.
Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Manuel. Well, we're waiting for them to come back on. You know, we felt it was important to not only bring this training to enlighten ourselves as community workers, but also for me, what was really, really important was that maybe we gain a different perspective and have another lens as we're working with our clients. A lot of our clients come from indigenous communities, and sometimes we may not understand how they see healing take place, or healing practices in the same way that we do. And so, you know, Jonathan and I felt that this would just be a very good training to not only enlighten our consciousness and ourselves, but also to support the work we do with a lot of the indigenous communities and even just the Latino community, period. So I wanted to share that. Oh, you still there, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
here.
okay, they're in the lobby.
Admitting them now.
Okay, great.
Ooh, plus we went on this long explanation and then we
I
were
know.
like,
It's
Yeah.
okay.
Well, sorry, everybody. I'll complete a thought and then we'll take
let's
a break.
take a break. Yeah, I think the universe is telling us, no, we need to stretch now and get something to.
Yeah. So decolonizing would be trying to recognize all of those impositions and not see them as a taken for granted, the right way of doing things, the best way of doing things, and recognizing the way that has harmed maybe us, because sometimes when you impose things and beliefs on a community that it doesn't really fit with them, that's where you start feeling like something's wrong, but I don't know why. I feel like I don't belong, but I don't know why. I feel and you're being excluded and your ways are being excluded. And then you start feeling like, oh, well, we have the wrong ways of doing things because this seems to be the right way. So it means recognizing that and specifically looking at those ways of being that we're told that were right for our communities by those
dominant assumed
ways of groups that imposed those values.
And think about that in terms of child development, right? If kids feel wrong in who they are just from a base level, right? Think about what that does to them as they're growing up, right? If they don't have their name said correctly, and it's not expected for somebody to even try, you know, or they just aren't valued, right? What does that tell them in terms of their identity development, their cultural identity development, their mental health, their wellness? What does that tell them, right? This is a huge, impactful thing, colonization. And so we're talking about decolonizing. That's why we're spending so many times saying, take off those Western lenses, put on your, these decolonizing lenses so that we can make those shifts that they seem invisible. Again, reiterating, making the invisible visible. And again, wellness is an act of resistance. Raising a healthy family is a revolutionary act. You're starting to see, I think, the spider web of connection of how all these things fit together, right? Why you're having this plática, this workshop, is so that you can make these connections. We can make these connections to be well and to serve our communities in a better way.
Yeah. Okay, if it's okay, we'll take five more after that. Sorry about that internet interruption, but we'll take 5 minutes, and so what we'll do is we'll turn off our camera, mute ourselves, and then in 5 minutes we'll turn our camera back on, and you'll know that we're back and ready to start.
Stretch. Go walk outside if you can, real quick.
Thank you.
Okay, as we slowly start to come back, I hope everybody's stretched. Got to step outside a little bit. Give everybody another minute.
Okay, we are back, everybody. All right, hopefully you got a little stretch, a little coffee or whatever you needed. So we wanted to open it up again to everybody to see if anyone has any other comments or questions about anything we've said up to this point. Yes, I
Yeah,
see
preguntas.
LH raised their
Yeah,
hand.
and feel free to speak out because sometimes we can't see.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Lesbia Henao. I am psychotherapist. I want to give my professional opinion regarding the previous um, message you were giving regarding the mental health and spirituality.
Hmm.
99% for my clients and my experience had spirituality and very, very, very progressive in mental health because they have beliefs. And this is very important because spiritually support mental health for myself and my profession because they uh, become help them to improve emotionally, but also to maintain better the behavior and move, and also to maintain the emotional stability. It's very progressive with them. And by experience, when I, for example, 18 session, 5 session, they got they expressing my belief and the Virgen de Guadalupe, my belief helped me to maintain my hopes.
Mm.
More than is post-traumatic stress disorder, very hard situation, sexual abuse, many stories. In more right now with the COVID, husband theirs, wives, and children. Oh my God, it's a lot painful story, but they maintain the spirituality and help them with the custom to maintain are doing the novena de los difuntos, pray so much different things. Well, okay, including me because I am Latino too. Oh my God, my custom is spiritually too. But when my client expresses that, for me it's more easy to help this client to grow emotionally because he's expressing a lot knowledge about the spirituality, the religion, the God, the Virgen de Guadalupe. I feel like, oh my God, I am in my space. I am very emotional therapist. I am helping my clients to growing, but spiritually for myself, professionally, yes, helps for massive mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, and it's always important to know because I think we do know how for many of our people, if they have that space to express their spiritual beliefs and their values in this way, that can really help with their movement forward. It becomes part of the conversation.
Mm.
And then it becomes part of the process. So then spirituality becomes less two-dimensional, less like it's there or it's not there, less of it, it's good or it's bad, but more of how does it fit for this person? And then we as the mental health professionals, those of us that are, can make that a respectful, significant part of the conversation, just as we do with all the other beliefs they have in their life, right? Where is it a strength? Where is it maybe, let's look at how you're interpreting that belief there. But it doesn't become either including or dismissing. It becomes with what it already is, which is complex. It's complex. It's layers. And then we can make it centering part of the movement forward for them, their growth and their healing, as you were saying. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much.
I forgot, I'm sorry, I forgot to say it's also including no ladies only, no women, men's too.
Mm-hmm.
It's very
All
important.
genders.
And the last thing I want to be sharing is help spiritually when the client is expressing spiritually a host, help them to cognitively to clarify events, pay for events, and process the feelings. This is very important. Thank you very much, Emma.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for sharing your palabra. Thank you very much. Yeah, the more of us that share, our own interaction with mental health, the more of a better and spirituality, the better picture we can get. And what it does too is that it doesn't divorce the piece of it. The big part of it is the spiritual, right? The spirit. There's the mind, there's the body. We know about the mind-body connection, but including the spirit, in opinions of some of us, it's integral. It's important. It can't be separated.
Right. Okay. Well, anybody else? Any other questions or thoughts or feedback that they'd like to share at this point? Okay. And we can. Okay. Well, we'll just start the share screen again. But if somebody wants to say something, of course you are welcome to do so. Okay.
So we touched on this, right? It's a revolutionary act to raise a healthy family because of all the things we've been talking about, because of all these invisible things or these, exclusions of all the parts of who we are, the devaluing of who we are, right? The criminalizing of who we are, the negative stigmas, all these things. And then the extra things we have to do as people of color to be well, right? It's exhausting. And so we say it is a revolutionary act to raise a healthy family. And we do multi-generational healing, right? So we healing multi-generational trauma 7 generations back and 7 generations ahead. And so with the Institute of Chicana Psychology, the way we do that is we match those multi-generational traumas with multi-generational strengths, right? Honoring our elders, honoring the wisdoms that have been passed down, and matching those strengths to help us heal the traumas. So Mexica concepts in daily life to strengthen us through challenges, right? All concepts are or can be meant to be integrated into our daily lives toward our wellness. So we're going to go into some of the concepts now. We're going to do a lot more of this. Things will be connected to the second part that we're going to do. Again, these pláticas, these community pláticas that we're having are meant to be standalone and also can support each other too. So what you learn here, you'll be able to recognize in parts of it in the next one. So raising children, relationships, self-acceptance, self-challenge, and dualidades. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, let's go on to the next.
And then we'll integrate it.
Yeah, we'll integrate it. Let's see. Um, so what do we want to say about this piece? I think we've been talking about this kind of really a lot up to this point. I guess the only thing I would add from this slide is that in certain what's called liberation psychology and liberation theology, which we won't get into as much, but part in those movements are this calling back the spirit, which is everything we've been talking about, bringing back the aspect of spirit and spirituality in the work of healing for our community, for the Latinx community, because we recognize that practices of spirituality are familial, they're personal, they're part of our spiritual religious wellness, and for our community, they have also been part of combating injustices. And anytime there is an injustice and there is suffering, from this perspective, those are also considered spiritual issues, right? So, yeah, so basically that's kind of what we've been talking about. Okay.
So also though you're speaking from a psychological mental health lens, because this also, I'm just going to go back a little bit. This also, I'm glad actually that you bring this up in that lens, because from my experience, we also do a ceremony to call back the spirit. When someone, you might say, has suffered a terrible trauma, and the spirit needs to leave the body to be safe, right? To protect itself. And people will say, like, I feel like I'm outside of my body, or I just don't feel like I'm, living. I don't feel like I'm really here, or they may disassociate a lot. We just did a calling back of the spirit a couple months ago in Sweat Lodge. I'm at the Mascalera. I have the blessing to give the Sweat Lodge, to where we brought in ice water, and so I poured a lot of water onto the grandmother rocks, which causes the vapor, the healing vapor, to get hot, 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 hot. And we did that. We raised that energy. We made it very hot. And then the person who needed their spirit called back because of terrible trauma that she had suffered. We then got the ice water, and she had to open her eyes. She had to open her eyes and open her mouth to get that breath. And we called her name back. We called her spirit back 3 times, putting the ice water, in her face. That can seem, if you're looking from a Western perspective, very like, what? You're throwing ice water in a traumatized person's face? But no, and in that way, her spirit was able to come back to the body. So I just wanted to make that connection that there's this calling back the spirit, mental health practices from liberation psychology and from that perspective. And there is that also, that connection to the ancestral ritual of bringing back the spirit in a trauma.
Yeah. And I think that's where they got that from bringing that in. Yeah. We've also talked a lot about moving from individualistic to collectivistic lenses. So
the reason that information intertwines itself again is that it's all connected. We talked about that spider web of understanding. And we also think of it as the way a rebozo. Can you pass me my rebozo? Is that there? The way it is woven, right? It's many families, many generations. It's an ancestral wisdom. And here is a rebozo, right? And it is used in the daily life. It's used for birth. It's used in pregnancy. It's used to shield the sun. It's used to carry things. It's used to keep the kids warm when they're cold, and ourselves as well. But do you see all the different interweavings, right? All the different threads. It takes months and months to make a rebozo from the artisans in Mexico and other communities who do this. But do you see how it just all weaves in these patterns in different ways? Well, that's what we're doing with the knowledge. We're doing that with the knowledge, with the wisdom, the things that we're talking about. They're going to interlace, and then as the weavings come together, it weaves a fabric of understanding, right? Of spirituality and mental health, of ancestral and contemporary ways, of Western, contemporary ways of seeing things, of colonization and decolonization. So things are going to come back and be said again. But now at this point in the time we've spent together, you'll be able to have made some shifts. You'll be able to have some understanding, some questions. There will be the times when, as a seed, I talk about this a lot, the Nahuatl word for the moment that the seed becomes a plant, that moment of sprouting is called chinachli. And that is the moment that the seeds that have been planted in the ground or in understanding, in shifting, in decolonizing, that they sprout into being a different form, a different way, into being a plant, right? So as we say things again, try and make those connections and understanding, and feel free to ask a question, to try and understand a little bit more. Feel free to just speak out. So we have talked about this. We've interlaced this a lot between all of the things that we've discussed, from individualistic brain to a collective relation to self, making it a relationship to everything instead of just an individualistic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So we have spent, and we will continue to always, even next time, spend time on orienting ourselves, our shifts from Western Eurocentric thinking and education to an Anahuac lens and perspective. Anahuac means surrounded by water. So that's the word for this more southern part of this continent. Sem Anahuac is all surrounded by water, so the entire continent, right? So Anahuac lens and perspectives from external understanding of things. And I thank you and the psychotherapist who just honored us with her word. Y'all talked about making this spirituality, just shifting it from an external understanding and individualism to an internal and a deep, multifaceted and multi-layered and more 3D, right, or more dimensions of understanding, to a viewing from within ourselves in relationship to everything that is, and a collectivism. And then noticing that when we have a meaning, sometimes it's a both and, it's a multiplicity of a meaning, sometimes more than just that. So by this time, I put this slide in here so that we can check in with ourselves, like where we're at with our understanding, with our lens, right? Knowing that things have multiple meanings, especially in a spiritual, indigenous Latino ancestry perspectives.
So, why this part of the spirituality? Why the reconnecting to the Anahuac, which again, as Tlazoltiani was saying, means this part of what we call the United States, the southern-ish Mexico, Latin America, the southern part of the U.S. up until then. It's a way of talking about all the indigenous knowledge within there. That's Anahuac, right? So, as we were saying, we were talking about the decolonizing piece. It's important to reconnect because we need to be able to know the ways in which our communities have been, I guess, like this is dictated, told what is right, told what is wrong, and then it becomes part of how we do things. And so the important part of that is the ability to choose, right? To choose what we want to integrate, how we grow, how we express our spirituality. And so part of it is to reconnect to a lot of the ancestral gifts that that we can tap into in our lives, that have been passed down, but maybe we haven't been able to reconnect, right?
To reconnect and remember, right?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
It says here, our ancestral gifts, to have that fuerza, that strength that we need to stand up to the ancestral and contemporary wounds. And then we can continue to move towards our aslan, right? Our liberation, our well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you are not from this ancestry too, to understand, to have this deeper understanding so that you can then interpret
Mm-hmm.
and center culturally the depth of spirituality that you may be seeing, the depth of the ancestral wisdoms and gifts that you may be seeing, right? You'll be able to work with it, to include it, to center it even. So we've had, as a people, a longing for what we never knew we had,
Right.
and we didn't know we were missing, right? Some of our elders will say, oh, we're missing the stars. We don't get to look up and see the stars anymore. And if you know ancestrally what she means, she meant that there used to be ancestrally people's, job to stay all night and look at the stars. And they would memorize what they are seeing, what movements, what shifts, what's taking place, what messages are there. We were great astronomers. And then they would the next day talk about what might be happening, what was different, what was new, what might be missed. And we're missing that cosmovision. We don't know that we're missing it, but we maybe feel like an emptiness, a void or something. And we are missing those kinds of things. Tekio, community. Tekio is an ancestral, beautiful thing that happens, and it still happens in Mexico and other parts of the that part of the continent, is where you build something in community that the community can use, and then you celebrate together after, you enjoy a meal together. And it's a spiritual ancestral thing. We have tekio still all the time on our kalpuli, our community land, where we build something we can all use. We work hard and then we celebrate. So these are things that we're missing, sitting out on the porch, talking with each other. Now it's like we just don't even want to make eye contact. We don't feel a base feeling of safety, and it's a disconnection. So reconnecting can give us all these gifts back once we start to reconnect and decolonize in these ways.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Let's see.
I think that how are we on time? Because I might not want to go through the whole anatomy of that prayer. It's already 1 almost.
Yeah, we haven't. Well, for us it's 1. I think for y'all it's almost 11.
Right. So we have about an hour left together.
About an hour. Yeah.
So I'll just go over real briefly. So we honor the directions, right? The 7 directions. We always say the 4 directions, north, south, east, and west, and then we include a direction of the cosmos and the direction of our Madre Tierra and a direction of all of our hearts, right? Which I honored all of our hearts. Earlier, I asked for permission from all of your hearts to be able to spend this time together and to share in a good way. So in a way, you saw a part of this prayer. We began anything and everything well. Gypsy modeled that too, because when she, started speaking, she already speaks in a way, because she's over 52, and we measure our years in groups of 13. So in the span of things, she would be considered an elder of the ways, of the knowledge, of the understanding of the ways. So she started and she began with gratitude, right? Oh, I honor you. I honor these 2 people. I'm grateful that you're here sharing this information about spirituality and these perspectives and the way it connects contemporarily, ancestrally to mental health. So she began in that way. And we also began in that way. Begin and anything and everything well, and end it well. So if you open something, you close something. It's an energy exchange. When you come, for us, we'll give tobacco or we'll give something. And these things trickle into our contemporary life, our dominant cultural life right here in this country. You don't show up empty-handed, right? That's the way it shows up. or mi casa es su casa. Well, that's an ancestral thing. If you go to one kalpuli, you know, you show up from another kalpuli, you know, maybe that other kalpuli, you know, works with herbs, and maybe this one works with sweat lodge or something. You go there and they're going to give you everything you need. If you need medicine, you have medicine. They're going to give you food. They're going to give you, you know, everything you need. So they, in that way, you know, they open up their home, and their home is your home. And so, and now we say mi casa es su casa, right? So it's interesting to know the roots and to be able to trace what is ancestral, like avocado is an ancestral word, tomato, you know, is all these words are not what words, right? We could go on forever on just that. So anyway, you begin and you end everything well. So you might incorporate that, right? You notice people will say things in a certain way, right? Well, I begin with gratitude and with honoring who I'm speaking to, and I end in that same way. and being mindful that there is an energy exchange that is happening there. You are having an energy exchange at any time, like we are having with you. So we would do a prayer or an honoring of the 4 directions, but we're going to not go through all this so we can have more time to talk about so many other things.
Yeah, we can continue.
So just thinking of that beginning and ending everything well, right? We eat, we go for walks, we sweep, whatever. So you begin planting a seed in that way. And I put here a metaphorical seed or a physical seed. You plant it and you honor it. Thank you, Madre Tierra. Thank you, Earth, for taking this seed, for growing it. Thank you, seed, for what you're going to become, a food or a medicine to nourish myself, my family, or people. Thank you. As permission, may I plant this, you know, in the ground. And then when you harvest, you ask the plant for its medicine and its permission. You thank it. Thank you for what you're going to provide food for my family. Thank you for this offering, for being of service in this way. I'm grateful for you. I ask permission to harvest you. You harvest, right? And then, so what I'm describing here is completing an entire cycle. And we'll talk about cycles next. So then you buy the food, that you took the hands to work to buy the food, right? And then the hands to wash the food, prepare the food, cook the food, right? And when you cook, you know, you cook in a way that is giving that love that you're going to share with whoever you're going to share that meal with, right? The other day, I was having, you know, a difficult time when I was cooking, and I realized when I just came back to what I was doing, I was just putting so many difficult, negative things into those beans. And so I had to offer the beans to our Mother Earth, and I had to make new beans because I wasn't going to serve that, right? Because you're going to share your energy in what you're doing. So then you serve that meal and you eat together, right? Or just on your own, but you have that honor. You've honored that whole cycle from seed to eating. And then you offer a spirit plate if you have an altar, or whatever you have. If you want to, you can offer a plate to the spirits that are guardians of the sacred place of where you live, guardians of that land, your ancestors, whoever may be there with you. You offer them a spirit plate. And then when they are done with it, when you're done eating, you can give it back to our Mother Earth, right? You can honor it by giving it back to her. So I've just described eating a meal in a very not typical way, right? In a Anawaka indigenous lens. And look how much spirit is in that. Look how much spirit is in that meal. How much connection, how much interconnectedness happened there with everything that lives, with that relative that was a seed, that relative that was a plant, that relative that in your own hands as you cook it and as you share it, right? The words that are spoken at the meal, and the water. A lot of us are familiar with that study where that water, you know, molecularly changes shape and creates different patterns based off the words that are being said to it. So we know that our mother's blood, that water is alive. We're saying a lot of things, a lot of concepts, a lot of things, a lot of different ways of looking at eating a meal, at completing a cycle. We're saying a lot of things. And it's hard on Zoom or on Teams, you know, to see each other and to connect with each other. So if anybody wants to share anything or ask a question or anything at all, feel free.
Maybe we should just wait.
Yeah, maybe we should pause a little bit because, I mean, this is a lot being said very quickly. Unfortunately, 3 hours is a good amount of time, but it's, we're not together. We don't get to feel each other's energy, see each other. And so it can feel very, very long, but it's still a lot of concepts to pack into that amount of time. So I'm going to pause and just enjoy a little pause. We don't have to go fast. And usually when we talk about spirit and are in spirit, we go slow. People who are new to Sweat Lodge might be, oh, what time does it start at end? You really don't know. It could be 10 hours. So we'll just pause for a second. Okay. If anybody is moved to say anything, please do. If you need to get up and stretch, please do. And then we will move forward. So, talking about our wellness, our well-being, our mental health, our physical health, all being connected. There's this is a very, very basic overview of the different medicinas, remedios, curaciones, ojo, the different medicines, remedies, curative rituals. Ojo, most people know ojo, which is like the evil eye, although it's not necessarily evil. Somebody exchanged energy, especially with children. They're just so cute, and you just want to, oh, they're so precious. And you'll see some of us will go up and touch. I'm sorry, I just don't want to give you ojo, and they'll go touch the child, right? Because guess what? They're doing an energy exchange, right? And that is something that we do without even realizing.
Yeah.
So quick overview, so that you might know what the community might be doing for their wellness, right? Plant medicine, that can be in the form of teas, barro, which is clays. You can put the medicines in with the clays and put it on for different ailments. Jugos, you might need to get certain things in a juice form. Tinctures, which is concentrated form of the herb, right? So you could have the herb as a tea, or you might need it more concentrated as a tincture, which lasts longer, which you can do on the run. You can have it in your bolsa, in your purse or your bag, and just drop a few. Microdoses is another way, concentrated form where you can just have it ready and take it in that form. Remedios físicas, so physical remedies. Risa, the laughter, that is medicinal. Now in contemporary times, there's been studies, right? So confirming what we already know, right? What we already knew for thousands of years, is that laughter, it causes health, it causes different things to function better. It causes you to realign, and it causes shifts in your body and in your mind to laugh. So we'll laugh on purpose until we're laughing for real. And we use that medicine in our family a lot. If things get hard, we're just gonna laugh, right? Laugh or cry. So that is a medicine. Sobados, massage, but there is an ancestral ceremonial way to do it, right? So there's massage. It wouldn't be like the kind of massage you get at I don't know, those places where you get 3 massages for $39.99 or whatever. No, it's a particular people that are taught to do it in a certain way. Limpias, the cleansings with the herbs or with the fire, with the copal. Like Gypsy was saying, we'll burn copal. Ooh, that gives you a really good spiritual cleansing. Xuticutli huehueteo abuelo fuego. So that's the limpia we were saying that you could do with a fire. People who are allowed to carry fire have these poposhkomis, and that's where we keep our fire in, and we can do those healings like that. And then you can use plantas, manteadas, and that is a more Spanish word, but this is like the rebozo. You can use these to do all kinds of healings. If it's an older person, somebody who you have to move gently, or a pregnant woman, you can use these to shift and cause body realignment and all kinds of things that need to happen. Curaciones, so cures, right? We use the egg, right? Because it is a larger cell. So sometimes it's a lemon, if that's what you have, but it can be an egg. So it can absorb the illness because it is a larger cell. So whatever is going on, with the family member or the friend or whoever is in need, you do that rubbing of the egg with, whatever intentions or prayers the curandera has, or really the mother, the father, whoever is using the medicine and knows how in a good way, has learned. Then they just go on and do that, and it absorbs the illness, right? And the plants also absorb, as do many medicines. So we just did a ceremony honoring the energy called Tlazolteotl, which is where I get my name, Tlazoltiani. And so we did a sweeping of ourselves. It was what was more commonly known as that Mercury is in retrograde. But because we align ourselves right with the cosmos, and we know when to plant, when to harvest, and when to do certain things. So it's celebrating the end of the harvest, and we did a danza, and we had herbs, and we shed everything we didn't need, everything that wasn't serving us. I mean, think about that, and it's medicinal uses and wellness, mental health, right?
Yeah.
Again, not co-opting, but incorporating in some respectful way, right? Just that sweeping with the herbs, sweeping all off that you don't need, tapping first to wake up that ancestral memory, tapping to wake up that cellular memory, and then shedding, sweeping off onto our Madre Tierra. She can take it, she absorbs it. Yeah. And then we give those herbs back to our Madre Tierra. So we used rosemary. So
just recognizing people that do that.
Recognizing,
that you're saying.
Yeah.
Like,
so these things are alive. These things are happening. These are not historical things. These are not,
of the past.
We are saying ancestral, but they're present. They're happening now. They're happening regularly. So what a beautiful way to shed what doesn't serve you anymore at the time, honoring the end of the harvest, right? So this is just to give you a window of what's happening out there, what people are doing, what people are reconnecting to. This is to give you just a little snapshot of in practice, the spirituality that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And recognizing, in case you hear somebody talking in that way, like, oh, okay, that might be connected to this, might be connecting to that.
Right. Yeah. And knowing that there's an energy exchange happening, that there is an honoring of each other as we speak, right? So as we weave together this rebozo of understanding, the spider web of understanding, we know, or we learn, that each of us is an entire universe. So when we come together with the community, as you do in the work that you do, you're standing in front of a whole another universe, or a whole, like right now, we are talking with so many different universes of experience, of lived experiences, of understanding, of beliefs, of so many things. So, we can't begin to understand all that you are, right? But when we know that, we just honor, like Jonathan was saying, his relationship and his wife's relationship to spirituality have caused him to be respectful of others' experiences, others' ways of being, and honoring that each of us is a universe, right? So that we don't make those assumptions necessarily, those possibly negative or harmful assumptions, right? So this web of understanding, our ancestral knowing that we all call our despierta. In our communities, we call. And Eurocentric Western education, we would talk about this as a renaissance, right? But for us right now, this waking up, despierta means to wake up, like to open our eyes. It is a remembering, a coming back together, a reconnecting spiritually that we've been talking about. So right now, at this time, with everything, with COVID, with all of the racial traumas going on, and families being separated on and on and on, our Mother Earth being in an imbalance, and all of these things, her blood, the water being in imbalance. We're in a gran despierta, so a large waking up.
Yeah.
We're in a large waking up. And that's funny because the youth call it like being woke, right?
Yeah.
Which is funny because for us, it's a gran despierta. So we, in this web of experience and understanding, ancestrally, this first despierta happens at age 13. For girls, it's a ceremony called a chilonen. For those who identify as girls, a ceremony called as chilonen. And for those who identify as masculine and male, it's a telpocanesi, despierta del niño. So that's what we say, we measure our years in age of 13, right? So that's when they reach 13, they have their first awakening, their first ceremony, honoring that they're waking up to the world, to what's going on, right? And right now, all of us in general are having a gran despierta. And I think we can feel that. I think we know that. I think societally, communities, we know and we understand this. So that's why I think it's important that Amanecer, that Gypsy, Jonathan, that all of you have come together to have these kinds of conversations, to have these kinds of cultural, going in depth, understanding all of these different things so that we can walk in a good way, we can show up in a good way, we can have this, this waking up in a good way that honors each other, right? I think it's a beautiful thing, and I honor all of you for doing it.
Yes. So I think I want to do another just quick check-in with everybody.
Yeah, because we're winding down, and I know people's energy is waning.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of open it up and see if there are any thoughts, any questions, or any comments that anybody would like to share.
And remember, it doesn't have to sound brilliant at all. Just speak your heart, or whatever general question.
Any question.
Any question. This practice reminds me of the mindfulness aspect of DBT. That's what Beverly was saying in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all connected, right? You see the roots of certain things.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Zamarripa, Manuel always annoys me because he'll pause for a long time and give people a chance to settle into what they might want to say, and I'm like, you're not talking. But you know what? It's good to be able to pause like that. So I'm going to honor that pause that he wants to do.
I just wanted to ask. You mentioned a really great. I think it was a psychologist or a professora. Maybe in the chat, if you can give some recommendations on some readings or any other resources that we can kind of have access to, and maybe some may want to pursue more reading, more investigation. But I'm definitely interested in the person that you had mentioned that you just absolutely love.
She's a Puerto Rican psychologist. I'll put her last name on here.
Thank you.
It's hyphen Comas Diaz. And if you look at her on Google or, I think there are a couple of her PDFs will come up as free to download.
Mm-hmm.
And there are several that she has on Latinx healing and spirituality and healing.
Liberation psychology.
She's been recently
Wow.
doing some publications and resuscitating liberation psychology with
I love it. I think it's so important that we support our sisters and brothers who are doing the work in talking about who we are as brown people or as Latinos or as indigenous people. You know, always I'm always reading and coming by a lot of different works from people who are not
Uh-huh.
indigenous or Latino, and they write about our culture, they write about our people, they write about our healing ways. And it's fine. And I will accept others views and what in and the the writings and such. But I think it's so important that we support our own in doing this work, and that we get to know them as authors, and we get to know them as who they are in their contributions to sharing the knowledge of our people or even our communities, psychologists, sociologists, and even if they're not, Mexicano, Chicano, or say they're from, other countries, just for the fact that they are of Latino, ancestry, it's so important that we support that. I'm also in academia, and as you know, I work with a charter school, Academia Semillas del Pueblo, and we have a very robust Nahuatl program. But more in the almost 20 years that I've been involved with the school, so many times we have had scholars and professors who are Caucasian that come to us and want to teach our kids our own language. And although that's wonderful, but what we have done is that we have set up to where we can bring Nahuatl teachers from Mexico. We work with the government, get them their visas, and we bring these Nahuatl teachers to Semillas to teach our children. And no, they're not professors and they're not in great big academia, but they are native speakers in Nahuatl and they are humble teachers. And so, yeah, it was just wow. I just couldn't believe how, but again, we have to
Yeah.
change that. We have to change that paradigm.
Yes, it's important that we honor that we are the experts, each of us individually, like even in the
Mm-hmm.
therapy room, we're the experts of our own lives. And here we're the experts of our own ways, of our own knowing. And to, for example, Dr. Zamarripa, he represents academia and all of that research and knowing, and I honor him for that. I come, from the people, and I represent the knowing from the community, right? Community organizing, the medicine, and all of those ways. And we come from ceremony, living it, right? So it's important what you say. There's a thing out right now to where some mujeres who they would cook and they would take care of the mountain climbers. And what is that mountain? I don't know. In Bolivia, I think. No, I don't know where it is. But anyway, it just came out in the news. For years and years and years, they would take care of the mountain climbers. Pues estas mujeres, these women, put on their skirts, put on their traditional clothes, and they climbed the mountain themselves, finally. Just, they climbed to the top of the mountain themselves in ceremonial, their own clothes. And it was a beautiful thing. And that's what you're saying, like, we have to remember that we carry the knowledge and the wisdom forward of our own peoples, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that we can honor ourselves for that.
Yeah, because people love writing about our culture and they love studying our ancient civilizations and they love doing all this archaeology. And look at who is, behind all this archaeology. It's not our people, and it needs to be. So right on with what you're doing. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to share anything as we let things settle in and wind down?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, any questions that have come up in terms of what we've said, how it relates to you, to your life, or to your work?
Or if you disagree, right, in any way, if you have questions about it, because we welcome all voices, all universes to speak, right? And to share. We don't only need to hear the pretty words, right? We have room for everything because we're a community and you receive everything when you receive community, right? So in any way, anything you want to share.
Yeah, any questions you have about how this may relate to your work or your life or of anything we've said at this point, up to this point?
We're honoring the circle, the círculo right now, which is all of you.
Hi, this is Beverly again. I just had a quick question, I guess, to clarify in my mind the scope of the training. So I know that it's entitled Latinx Spirituality and Wellness, but it seems like the lens is a little bit more of like a Mexican American Chicano kind of perspective. Is that correct? Is that what?
That where we say Anahuac, that is all of the peoples, right? All of the native peoples from the Southwest down. So all of the Latinx ancestral peoples. So a lot of this is shared. Like you go, yeah, we do speak from a Chicanx lens in some way because that is our focus, right? At times, but we also include, if you go back, Toltec, Olmec, all of the peoples. There's a lot of similarity. Mayan, Inca, Taíno, which is Puerto Rican. Well, what today would be called Puerto Rican, right? And also Mexican, a Mexica. So when we say Anahuac, we're referring to the roots of all of this knowledge, all of this wisdom, which is similar too to our northern peoples, right? That we say the eagle and the condor. So this is more of the knowledge of from the eagle, the southern portion of the continent. But the condor is referred to as the northern peoples, right? And we also have similar things, like we all honor the directions, we all honor the sacred elements. And so there's a lot of interweaving, a lot of similarities among the peoples, but you might hear us more talk about things being at the border in, Texas, where we are, in California. You guys are in Islas, right? Islas Angeles? Yeah. So honoring too the people that you work with mainly, but I know that there's just an expanse of people. So we do both. Is the long answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just getting the clarification because I think some of the terminology that you're saying that is similar within like the different peoples, the terms that we're using in this training are mainly Nahuatl, correct?
Yeah, the ancestral language that we're using in this training is mainly in Nahuatl. Yeah.
And I also think that our thread of commonality for Latinx communities is our indigenous concepts of spirituality as our foundation, as our thread of connection. So even though there are differences, a lot of the ones that we tend to spend time with and talk about are those that have some overlap across. So it is a different lens, as opposed to seeing our commonality as our thread of commonality as like maybe the Spanish language, except for Brazil, or the we see our commonality as our indigenous, connections as the
to the land,
to the land, and so a lot of the practices are very similar in many of the in other indigenous Latinx communities. There are differences, but the ones that we focus on tend to be those where there's some crossover.
Yeah, does that answer your question?
It does, because some of the elements that you were discussing, I feel like I've heard of them through like the Mayan perspective, or like the Mayan terms that maybe are used for them.
Yeah.
I'm not like super familiar or anything like that, but
you're right.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. You'll find commonalities if you decide to go deeper and study all the peoples. You're going to find a lot of commonalities, and just with the different words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, no, thank you. And then Brenda was saying that she has a curiosity about any rituals when a child crosses a body of water. I have a memory as a child, but I don't understand it well. Well, we do that almost every day for our kids in the water.
We cross
in the car
river here in Austin, so we We do it all every day.
Yeah, I'll just say real quick, and then I'm sure, you know, because you have been doing this a lot more often for a lot longer with the kids, but the running water, particularly rivers, are have their own spirit, have that spirit of that running water, and energies do what they are intended to do, and so they have that pull. And so a lot of the times when kids whose spirits are new and like exploring, right? They have kids have that exploring energy. If we're crossing a river, particularly a bridge in a car in these days, and a child is asleep, we call out and try to tie that child's spirit to stay with us. We'll say, stay with us, come with us. We say the child's name, come with us, because of that recognition of the powerful energy of the river, where when a child is asleep, that's where their spirit is a little more vulnerable, and we don't want that piece of their consciousness for the river to take it.
Mm. So like we'll say, ven conmigo, no te quedes, come with me, don't stay with the river, and we're talking to their spirit, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll see that even in so many commonalities in other ancient peoples. I don't know if anybody knows Hayao Miyazaki, but there is a piece where he refers to that river spirit and calling the child spirit. So yeah, thank you for asking that question. That is something that we do. We call the spirit of the child to cross the water with us. Don't stay in that river, you know. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's different energies of the waters. Tlaloc is the rain. I could go on forever on the energies of the waters, so I'll stop there.
Yes.
But
there's
yeah,
so much to talk about and all of that.
I hope that answers your question. And if anybody has any more questions, or we might move on to closing. It's 1:30 our time, Central Time.
So what I want to do, if that's okay with you listeners, I want to show the slides again, and then let's just run through them. You and I, like, we can show it with everybody here, and let's just stop and pick on the ones that we want to. Mm-hmm. So we have the cycles.
I think we talked about the cycles. We went through the cycle of eating, right? Mm-hmm. Of food from seed to
we have
the meal.
We
could talk about the elements.
Talk about the elements. I don't know if we want to go into the obsidian mirror as much. We could. We've talked about limpias.
We talked about limpias, yes.
We talked about the sweat lodge a little bit.
We could talk a little bit about. Let's talk a little bit about sweat lodge, but first, a bit about the elements.
Okay.
And then we can show the last 3 sides just to show, a little bit about what we're going to be covering next time too.
Yeah.
So in relation to everything that exists, everything that is, right? All of the different Nahuatl peoples, all of the different, all of this entire continent of peoples, of first peoples, share that we honor the sacred elements, and that we know that we embody them as well, right? Mm-hmm. And how we use them in our lives. So think about this in relation to yourself, in relation to your families. Think about the different moments in time where these things, one was higher than the other, one maybe needed to be, be more in balance with the communities that you work with. So fire, right? Fuego. Xutekutli huehueteo. Fire in you would be your spirit, your passion, things that, anger, right? Also guidance. Even in looking at the fire, we are taught to look at the fire, see what messages are in there, and in the coals too, that the natural coals that we burn. What shapes is it making? But also guidance in our lives, in our bodies, in our spirits. Movement, right? That kind of movement that fire is, just noticing all the way that fire is, right? Awakening. So fire, think about it in your life. Like right now, we were saying, if you move to speak, that is the energy of the wind, right? But it's also the energy of the fire. If you feel passionate about something and you're moved to say something, you let that fire flame up and you speak up. Or if you're experiencing an injustice, or if you are witnessing an injustice, it's very, you feel maybe unsafe to say something, but you are moved, you just raise that fire within you to speak. And even if you cry, when I was in my 20s and I would have to stand up for somebody or for my kids, every position is a social justice position. When you're working with people of color, when you are people of color, right? So when you move to speak, even if you cry, you just raise that fire and you speak what you need to say. And then you take care of yourself, right? For having had to speak up and move out of what is safe. But you raise that fire and then you calm the fire when you need to. A lot of youth that are struggling with different things, different traumas, they might have too much fire going all the time, right? And if you work with them, you might want to work with them with the earth to ground them, to center them, to release all of that. You might want to work with them with the water to let that wash through them, right? So you wouldn't put a young man who's struggling, with a lot of issues maybe that cause him to act out aggressively. You wouldn't want to put him with the fire. You would want to work with him with the earth or with the water. Is it starting to make sense, the way we are embodying all of these different things and the way we are related to them and the way we honor them, right? And each energy, each sacred element has its own energy. So for the East is the Amanecer. It's what you're named after, the direction of the East, the direction of the first light, the direction of the dawn, the direction that the sun rises, right? So that fire is in the direction of the East, from the direction of the East. And that would be the energy of Quetzalcoatl. So then wind, right? Our breath, our voice, our impulse, also movement, right? That is the direction of the north, the direction of our ancestors, the direction of introspection. We didn't cover the obsidian mirror, but the direction where we look in that smoky mirror, and it's smoky because we can't ever see ourselves so clearly, right? But the wind, the movement, the spreading of pollen, the spreading of seeds, all of these things, right? So how do you connect with that breath, with your voice, with the song, with the cantos, strong medicine of song of cantos? And that energy is of the north is Tezcatlipoca, but the word for wind in Nahuatl is Tlaloc. So consider the ways that these work together, the ways that they work in your life. Earth, your body, right? Medicine, herbs, food, our mother, she sustains us, right? Rooted, being still, grounding, focusing.
All of these things that we can see that we may need in our lives, right? And sometimes we see this playing out in people's lives when they have certain beliefs or connections to some of these elements, the sacredness of fire, the messages of the wind, the importance of the earth, the sacredness of taking care of the earth, the cleansing power of the water. And I like to connect these two with things that can be reminders for the work that we're trying to do and for the work that maybe the people you're working with are trying to do. Because we use these reminders and these metaphors also in a lot of other different ways for other things other ways that people are trying to move toward wellness and shift. So, for example, sometimes we'll say, okay, put a timer on your phone, and 3 times a day when that timer goes off, that's your cue to try to think about, how many negative thoughts have you had and how many positive thoughts have you had, or whatever, right? Example. So we could make more of a, for some people it's a spiritual, sacred connection, if that's part of who they are, with some of the elements, So remember, when you go outside today and you feel that sun on your face, remember that's the element of fire. Where's your that's your reminder to gauge your passion or to gauge your anger, or a reminder like, how much do I feel like I know what I'm going to do today? Do I feel lost? Do I need that guidance of the fire, that light to remind me of where to go? When you step out, every time you feel that wind breeze on your face, that's your reminder. Did I use my voice today? Did I have my voice squelched? Did I, or sometimes the wind is all over the place, depends on the work you're doing, right? So maybe it's a reminder about impulse. Have I been acting too impulsively? Do I need more earth? Do I need more grounding? So each of these, similar examples, right? Anytime you step out onto the earth, anytime you're walking from your door to your car, remember that as Tlazoltiani says, you're caressing the earth with your steps. Remind yourself, I need to ground
You're
myself
honoring
today.
her.
I need to root myself in what I know to be true about myself as I move through the day. Water is also reflection and cleansing, and
it's our blood, and it's our Madre Tierra's blood. It has memory.
It's crucial to life flowing within us. So, in the healing work that you're doing, you can connect that metaphor of water in similar ways when you encounter any type of water. Let that be a reminder of fill in the blank on what they're working on if it's connected to what the water represents. When you take a shower, let that water cleanse.
Yeah, you can let it unblock whatever's happening, wash away what you've experienced or the stress of the day.
Yeah, so those are kind of.
So you're starting to see how this is so much more a part of your life than maybe you knew. So much more a part of who you are and how you're related to everything that is and everything that exists, right? So spend time even with your dualidad. If you have a partner, what might you know about them that you need to work more with earth with them, or they might need to work more with water with you, or however you interact in any of your relationships with your children, right? Especially.
Yeah, that reminds me, everything has a balance. Everything has a balance, and so in these four elements, everything has its other side, so for fire it's water, and for wind it's earth, right? So for wind, if I'm too impulsive, I need more grounding, I need more earth in my life. If I'm too stuck, if I'm too rooted, if I'm not going with my own flow, if I'm not paying attention to my own movement, I need more wind, right? And what's that balance? And same thing with fire and water.
Yeah, we could go on and on. There's so many concepts about the ometeo, the opposite energies. Ome means two, teo means sacred creating energies. So when two come together, you're creating something like with this is my panwewe, this is my drum. This is alive, right? The animal gave his offering. We use all of the animal. This is his skin, right? And then I connect with that heartbeat, right? This is the fertilization, the masculine and the feminine. This part is fertilizing, right? What we could go on and on about everything, but you're making that connection with the heartbeat of each other in this circle, the heartbeat of our Madre Tierra, the heartbeat of the drum, right? The heartbeat of the canto. So here we are, harmonizing and making that connection. Ometeo, two different energies coming together to create, right? Light, dark. You might think too, ancestrally in Eastern traditions, the yin yang, right? It's similar, not exactly the same. So hopefully all of your connectedness to everything is coming together. So we're gonna skip all of that.
I think we did that too.
And just briefly touch on the Temascal, right? Temascal is the sweat lodge. And as you'll see here, again, spiderweb of meaning, rebozo of meaning, multiplicity of what everything means. See that there's the woman, right? And in her womb is that healing happening, right? And in our earth, the reason it's like that, and see, she's being fertilized by the moon there, right? Her healing, her hair is the water, right? And you see the umbilical cord too. So, which is also representative of the way a tree was drawn in some of the codexes, right? So, and you see in the other picture, they are in the womb of our Mother Earth. So think about healing in a therapy room, right? Healing client, therapist, or social worker, client, or whatever work we do with the community, right? Think about our interactions there, and then also shift to understand this kind of community healing. It'll be like maybe 20 or so or more of us all in the sweat lodge, right? Well, we're healing in our mother's womb there. We're healing in her womb.
Mm-hmm.
And that where the grandmother rocks are that are doing the healing too, that is her belly button. You see how it goes in? That's our Mother Earth's belly button. And those rocks are from our mother's heart because they're volcanic rocks, and our Mother Earth has a heart of fire, right? So those rocks, are sacred. They're grandmothers. They're old, ancient, rocks. So they teach us, they do the healing, and then there's the humo, the vapor, right? The smoke coming to rising out to do the healing as well. We invite the spirits in to help us do the healing. Community healing, we're all there, skin next to each other, sweating, praying, crying, singing, muddy. We crawl in with reverence. We don't walk in. We crawl in. We honor her by stepping our hands and our legs as we enter her womb. And we are also flying in the universe at the same time. So talk about multiple meanings and think about the way we heal in the work we do with community. Just it allows you to make a shift of what is possible, right? To connect to your cosmovision, to connect to all the different ways that healing can happen, to understand and maybe step aside and think of a creative way in which you can do your work with the person in front of you, whether it be children, dualidad, community. So take in this way of healing, right? And make that connections for the way in which we are working with people. Okay, so we already talked about, the Mescal, Sweat Lodge. We could go on and on about just that. And here's some other concepts we're just going to lightly touch on. Olin. This is 2 from the ancient codexes. Do you see that movement, right? It's interconnected, right? The movement is interconnected. There's a space in the middle. That is for heart. That is for your heart. That is the 5th point. Like in a pyramid, 4 solid points on the bottom. Nawi means 4. So the 4, and then it rises up to the 5th point in the middle, right? Where you make all the connection, where the shift happens. So it's the sacred movement, right? And we've been doing that all day, right? Here together, sacred movement, making these shifts, making these connections. Mm-hmm. We'll talk more about this in the next one. Ometeo, we touched on it. Dualidad of the universe, the balance. Mental health struggles, we think about the Ometeo, what is out of balance? Mm-hmm. Manuel talked about that a little bit. Right. Nothing in our philosophy, our ancestral philosophies, nothing was bad or good. That was when Christianity, came and made, all of these things bad or good. No, it's just an array of experiences, and community comes together. That's what you do. Community comes together to help balance us again.
Yeah, I think, I mean, nothing has a fate of being from its inception till its cycle ends. Any energy, any person, anything that is inherently bad or necessarily inherently good all the time. There are things that become bad at a certain time, like not healthy, not the best thing, out of balance. And that same thing can also become beneficial at a different time. And we see that with coping behaviors that have outworn their usefulness for a lot of people that are struggling with, behaviors that aren't as healthy for them, or mental health struggles or we see that in whole communities that have had to adapt and cope with things that have been done to them. And in those moments, those ways of behaving and coping help them get through that process. But once that's done, those behaviors stay, but now they're not helping them cope through that process, and continuing those behaviors can become harmful or become counterproductive. And so then those behaviors that once served them as maybe good now can become bad. And so that's, we're always looking at what is out of balance and in balance. What does that person need now in their life? Mm-hmm. Have they outworn some of their behaviors that have helped them before? And so I think that fluidity and flexibility helps us to see in a broader picture what's happening now, what needs to happen now for this person, and what needs to happen, as they move forward in their life.
Mm-hmm. And these are, of course, a lot of these things are deeper philosophical conversation, these ancestral concepts and gifts that we were passed down and given, right? Because we know there's bad things, right? So this is talking in more typical terms of wellness and balance and, behaviors. So that is the way that we're connecting the ometeo to mental health and wellness. Okay. I think we are wrapping up. So I just want to show you this. Maybe you'll have time to look it up. It's the Mexica medicine wheel, also called the Cruz, C-R-U-Z, D-E, Quetzalcoatl. Okay, I should write this down. Can you open the chat for me? Anyway, look it up. Okay, Quetzalcoatl. Maybe you can put it in there for me, Gypsy. Do you mind? Is that okay?
Oh.
Quetzalcoatl. Cruz de Quetzalcoatl.
Okay, Cruz de Quetzalcoatl. Got it.
So maybe y'all can look it up if you want to. And again, it is a philosophy of wellness, medicine wheel, wellness wheels, all these things, connection. You'll see so many different things. We talked about the Nawiolin, that sacred count is in here. And then here, this is Tezcatlipoca. This is from the Codex Borgia. And this image, this representation of Quetzalcoatl is well-being, human consciousness. This is human consciousness, right? Ancestrally. So, I mean, what a different representation. There's 20 day signs in what you would know as the Aztec calendar. 20 signs that represent different ways of who we are, different strengths, different parts of us. They're all in here. So this is human consciousness, right? And we can talk about this a little bit more next time. But I wanted to let this last slide just be yet another shift of all the different energies. I see the Masat, which is the deer. I see the jaguar, right? Ocelot, and his foot forward. And then his back foot is Cipacli. That's the very first sign of the Aztec calendar. That one is the, ancient, wise, knowing. The first sign.
Alligator or crocodile? No.
It's a crocodile. Yeah. And then Tochli is the rabbit. Just think about these energies of the animals, right? What they have, what they're like, what we know about them. He's on by the arrows up on the back. And then there's a shield too, right? So Tezcatlipoca is defending, talking about being a guerrero, a warrior for wellness, for well-being. So on and on and on and on, all the different signs on here. We could go on forever just with this image, right? But just again to close with the different understandings now, the shifts that we've made in our understanding of wellness and well-being and mental health related to Anahuaca understandings of mental health, wellness, and concepts.
So, where are we at? Because I want to make sure I give people their time. Okay, this is good. This is a good time.
Yeah, we still have 11 minutes.
I want to make sure that we give people time for questions. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I have my hand up, but I'll put it down. I just wanted to make a comment on what you were talking about, the sweat lodge in Temascal. And I wanted our community, I just want to make that definition that so Temascal is how we in our motherland experience what they call the Northern Indians sweat lodge. The difference
Yes.
between the sweat lodge and our Temascal is that traditionally our Temascal, which is another word for sweat lodge, was done under the earth. And in the pictures that they showed, you saw the earth and then people were underneath it. If you go to Mexico today, and you go to a traditional temazcal, it will be under the earth. When you visit a Native American sweat lodge, which a lot of us Chicanos do, and people who are non-Chicano, the sweat lodge is on top of the earth. And that sweat lodge and that experience you'll have is more, it's going to be more protocols towards the Native American and more of the plains indigenous people. So it won't be really centered towards how we do it in Mexico and how we traditionally done it, but you will still receive the same benefits and experience of cleansing the soul, cleansing your system, cleansing your psyche. But so I just wanted people to know, if you were going to experience a sweat lodge, it's not going to be run in protocols the way we do it in Mexico. If you could experience both, that would be wonderful. And we do have a beautiful elder by the name of, I believe her first name is Elena. She comes here and she runs it in the way that we do in Mexico. But when you go into the sweat lodge, we will do all the formalities of respecting the natives here. But once we're inside the sweat lodge, she will then redirect it in a way to where, so that you experience how you would experience it traditionally the way we do in Mexico. But you have to enter and give the respects like the Native Americans do here. I just wanted to share that. I think it's so important because you never know who's in this training may want to experience a sweat lodge, and so that they know the difference. And I just wanted to share that, and thank you for those beautiful examples of both. That really stood out to me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gypsy.
Thank you, Gypsy.
And yeah, when we're in the Southwest here, a lot of the times, you make it with what materials you have available. So we will adopt some ways of the Northern peoples, but we'll use willow to make our sweat lodge because that's what we have available. But when we can, we will then use, clay, and there's so many different ways to have a sweat lodge. Some are just individual. It just depends, right? But yes, thank you for saying that, because it is important always to come with respect, and it's nice to have an understanding about what you're entering, right? So thank you for that. Does anybody else have any?
I can stop share.
Yeah, let's stop share and see more of our faces, unless you're tired of looking at our faces now. But yeah, let's share. Let's be together. Let's ask questions. Let's close in a good way, because pretty soon our time together will have ended. We'll close in a good way. We're always available for questions.
So
yeah,
we can start that process of people putting in the chat right now. Any parting, you can still ask or comment, but we invite you to start in the chat, put in your parting comments. Your parting comments.
Yeah, if you wanted to add a palabra, a closing word, a closing palabra, something you wanted to say in closing.
Yes. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much, Karen.
Yeah. Yes. And do speak out too still if you had anything you want to say. We harmonized our energy in the beginning, and now we're closing in a good way where everybody can give their palabra, their word, and close our energy together. And then as you walk on for the rest of your day, the rest of the week, and you let the concepts and information and the shifts in knowing and understanding settle within you, like I said, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. So anything you want to just maybe what you feel you're leaving with today. Go ahead.
Hi. I kind of want to echo Karen's sentiment. that thank you so much for your work and for imparting your wisdom and and sharing your energy with us today. I know that I'm gonna research a lot of things and I'm gonna look into the authors that you recommended. Again, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your palabra too, as you spoke into the circle, and we honor your words and appreciate that as well. And all of you too for just being here, for sharing time together. Okay. We can continue to share out as you want to, and we'll start closing to honor our time, right? We don't know who has to go tend to the kids or the community in some way. Okay.
Thank you, Manuel.
So can you get my baqueta? It fell back there so that I can share a canto as we leave. But in the meantime, in honor of all of the sacred directions, including all of your hearts, with permission of those sacred directions, with permission of my elders, my ancestors, our elders, our ancestors, with permission of the guardians of the sacred place. Oh, please, adelante. Go ahead.
I'll join you with my sonaja if you're gonna tocar.
Yes, good. We can make that connection. Except Manuel has to get my bagueta. No, you can't get it. Well, I can use something else. Is there a stick or something that I can wrap in this? So with permission of all those sacred directions and all of your hearts, I want to express my gratitude. I want to make sure to exchange. What happened?
Okay, we're on.
Oh, okay.
We froze for a second.
Oh no, you would have to close for me, Gypsy.
I was saying, oh no, I don't know if you heard me.
Get the palabra, you're closing. You took the palabra with that sonaja. Now you have to close. No, so honoring all of your hearts and all of your lived experiences and all of your work that you do with the people, right? And with each other and in yourselves and in your families. I honor all of you and I'm grateful. We have gratitude for all of you that we got to spend this time with you. So if anybody wants to speak out, please continue to, and I am going to do a canto that, let's see, what's a good, easy, simple one that can help you know your connection to everything that is. Oh, there's the Gypsy, you know this one, the usual one.
Harandua? Hey, 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 Harandua.
Or we could do Tierra es mi cuerpo, agua mi pan. Yeah, that way everybody, because it has an English part too, and it'll connect you to our Madre Tierra. It'll connect you to her heartbeat. It'll connect you to all of the elements that are present. And I might have to use my hand, which is fine, because more connection, right? I'm creating that medicine. Remember, y'all can reach out too afterwards. Tierra es mi cuerpo, agua mi sangre, viento mi aliento y fuego mi espíritu. Earth is my body, water my blood, wind is my breath, and fire is my spirit. Hey, hey, Anna, hey, 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 Anna, hey, 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 Anna, hey, Anna, hey. Tierra es mi cuerpo, agua mi sangre, viento mi aliento y fuego mi espíritu. Earth is my body, water my blood, wind is my breath, and fire is my spirit. Hey, hey, Anna, hey, hey, Ana, hey. Ooh. Oh, Mateo.
Oh, Mateo.
Thank you for all of your energies that were here today. And again, feel free to reach out.
Oh,
Tazo Gamati, thank you for
Tazo
sharing your
Gamati.
palabra. Thank you so much. We honor you all. And I guess our time has ended. We'll
Have
have
a
to go
wonderful-
visit you all in Califas.
Yes.
We'll see you again in February for those of you that come back. Have a great day.
We'll
Thank
be the
you so
last to
much.
leave
thank
the
you,
circle.
Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Amanecer community. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you all. We will be the last to leave so that we can close the energy.
Okay.
Oh, beautiful. Claudia says she learned new things today. Wonderful.
That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Tazo Gamati.
Some part is new for myself because I was studying Chicano studies in the university.
Ah,
In Pacific College, every year is commemoration about that.
Yes,
yes.
Lesbia.
We're-
Thank you.
Enjoy so much my culture because my indigenous people.
You're beautiful, Lesbia. We're so grateful to have you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you to you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mrs.
I saw your orgullo when I first met you, and I could tell that you were very orgullosa of who you are and of of the people. So that radiates with you. So that's beautiful. I wanted you to know that.
Thank you, Jessie.
Should we turn our screen off and then we just
Sure.
let
I want the last one, please. No, Jessie, me.
Okay. She wants to be the last one, so I'll go ahead and go. Okay. Thank you so much, you guys.
Don't be too line. Okay. Thank you.
bye-bye. We'll put our screen off.
We'll put our screen up and we'll be here.
Yeah.